Hello, I'm Maciej Mikos and you're watching World Talks. It's Orthodox Easter in Ukraine and Russia, and both countries agreed to not attack each other for some 30 hours. Could this temporary truce transform into a more permanent one? To talk about it and more, we're joined by Stephen Moore, founder of the Ukraine Freedom Project and former Chief of Staff in the U.S. House of Representatives. Good evening.
Maciej, how you doing, man?
Good. Hope you're doing well too. Now, Stephen, let's start with the most basic question concerning the ceasefire in Ukraine. Do you believe the temporary ceasefire will hold, or will one of the warring parties violate it sooner or later?
Well, I think 30 hours we can be optimistic about, but I think beyond that, you're not going to see any way to keep the ceasefire because, Russia's already in violation of at least 25 ceasefires since 2014, and some of those lasted just hours. So, again, 30 hours. Let's be optimistic, but history does not really justify that optimism.
I see. Now, but let's say that in fact they will start, shooting at each other again on Monday. Now, do you think that that's the worst case scenario? But let's just suppose that the guns won't fire again on Monday. Now, is there a glimmer of hope for an Easter miracle in Ukraine?
Hey, man, there is always hope for a miracle. So it's Easter, and anything could happen. But, what you've got a Russian military that is on a jihad. They are the Russian Orthodox Patriarch Kyrylo has declared a holy war on Ukraine and the West. And he has said that, to Russians, if you die fighting in Ukraine, all your sins will be washed away. So this is not a regime, this is not a military, this is not a religion that really thinks about God in the way that you and I do. They think about religion, they think about spirituality, they think about God as a way to defeat their enemies. And so that's really interesting. There's two major wars going on in the world, and Russia and Iran are allied on it. And Russia and Iran both have this weaponization of religion. So, Easter means a lot to you. It means a lot to me. It doesn't mean a lot to the Russian Orthodox. They just use it as a tool to get an advantage militarily.
And what does it mean to Ukrainians who suffer, these constant Russian attacks have suffered these attacks for the last 4 years?
Well, everybody in Ukraine wants the war to stop, but nobody thinks that Putin will stop unless somebody makes him stop. We're in the United States right now, but 2 days ago we were in Ukraine, and there's no shortage of Iranian-designed Russian drones coming into Ukraine and killing civilians. And again, we've got really, it's two fronts in the same war, Iran and the Ukraine war, because Russia and Iran have been sharing technology for years. The Shahed drones, 57,000 of which have come into Ukraine in the last several years, they were originally designed by the Iranians. And then the Russians, through, again, these 57,000 attacks on Ukrainian civilians, have gained data and have been able to improve them so that they are quieter, they go farther, they carry more explosives, they're more deadly. And they have shared that technology back with Iran. So Iran is now using those improved Shahed drones to kill American servicemen.
Now, we're talking about Iran, and for a good reason, as the focus of the world is basically on Iran and peace negotiations between Tehran and Washington. However, Kyrylo Budanov, Ukraine's top negotiator, has stated lately that the war in Ukraine may be coming to an end and that he expects a U.S. delegation in Kyiv as soon as next week. Now, what do you make of that?
Well, I think Budanov is one of the smartest guys the Ukrainians got. I have a lot of respect for him. He was the author of the Operation Spiderweb, which is the last year when the Ukrainians sent 117 $500 kamikaze drones into Russia to take out about $6 billion worth of aircraft. That's a very smart man. And since he's gone into the office of the president, that institution was at the bottom of the trust ratings when Budanov got there. Now it is fourth from the bottom. So that's progress. And I think he's right. I think I've seen this over and over again. I've brought my conservative friends and conservatives who are not necessarily my friends to come to Ukraine. And everybody who comes to Ukraine walks away thinking, wow, these are people fighting for their freedom. They want to win. And their opinion of Ukraine's ability to win and the opinion of Ukraine writ large becomes more positive. So I think that Witkoff and Kushner coming there, I think is a really good thing. Now, but I don't think anyone is foolish enough to think that even if there's a ceasefire, even if there's a peace agreement, that the Russians are going to go away. Budanov has said that he's like, the Russians aren't going away, and it's a matter of making them stop. And the hard part about a peace negotiation is that then sanctions go away, and then people are going to try to reintegrate Russia into the world community, and they start making more money again off of their petroleum, and then they build up their army, and they build more drones, and then they either go back in Ukraine or they go into Eastern Europe or both.
Mm-hmm. Now, there's yet another aspect of the whole situation. Let me quote President Zelensky. With the start of summer, the U.S. will focus even more on domestic process, the elections, and I think they have a sort of domestic political deadline, roughly August. So does this mean that the Trump administration will make its best to end the war by then?
Yeah, well, here's what happens. They call the elections in the United States, they call it the silly season. And, every day as it gets closer to the elections, sillier and sillier things happen. People say what they feel they need to say to get elected. And it seems pretty foolish. So the ability to get anything done is tapering off. And then in the likely event that the Democrats take the House of Representatives, it's what they're going to do is they're going to impeach Trump for everything possible. And they're not going to be very focused on Ukraine. And frankly, just one House of Congress doesn't have much impact. And so things are going to get sillier and sillier until the election of 2028. And so, these are the golden times. Remember, I said that.
Well, the negotiations have been dragging on for quite a long time now, and the American administration, especially Donald Trump, likes to present his administration with certain deadlines, right? So, do you think there even is such a deadline for peace in Ukraine?
Well, as you point out, these negotiations have been dragging on for a long time, and that's because Putin doesn't want peace. Putin wants peace negotiations. And if you'll notice over the last 6-8 months that whenever there's an advantage by Ukraine, or whenever Congress says, okay, we're going to pass these sanctions, then Putin says, wait, let's have peace negotiations. And they don't amount to anything. I don't think that Putin has came off his initial demands at all. Zelensky is negotiating against himself. So it's just a way for Putin to jam up the military support for Ukraine. And and Trump is not the only stumbling block here. You look at Europe. Much of Western Europe just wants to get back to the days where they could drown themselves in cheap Russian petroleum. And Spain, France, Belgium last year all sent much more money to Russia for cheap petroleum than they did to Ukraine for its defense. And actually, you could go on. There's a bunch of other Western European countries that fit into that. But France, Belgium, and Spain are just egregious in saying one thing and then sending a bunch of money to Russia for cheap natural gas and cheap petroleum.
But do you see such a scenario possible that the US gets fed up with these ongoing negotiations if they fail to reach a consensus with Russia, and invite Europe to the negotiating table?
Yeah, I mean, I think that sometimes at some point they may get fed up. They've been going back and forth. We're fed up. We're fed up. We're fed up, but they don't seem to stop. So, and again, someone has to have some teeth, and someone needs to put pressure on Putin to stop what he's doing, because that's the only way he's going to stop. And whether that's Europe, I mean, we all know who in Europe is on the right side of things. It's Poland, the Baltic countries, the Scandinavian countries, the UK, Denmark, and the Netherlands, and so and it's Western Europe who's just gotten fat and happy, and has no respect for human life in Ukraine. It's okay with them to send money to Russia for them to use to send Shahed drones into Ukraine and kill civilians. So someone needs to figure out that Europe is at war with Russia and take action on that information.
About sending money to Russia, Estonia says it will not stop nor board Russian shadow fleet vessels, as Russia may respond in some military terms. Now, is this the aftermath of the US lifting sanctions and allowing the Russians to sell their oil again?
Yeah, I think it's like, okay, no one is trying hard here, and and Estonia is not going to stick its neck out on the line. But the irony here is that there's a blockade now in the Straits of Hormuz, and there's never been a blockade, in the English Channel or any other places in the Baltic Sea that you could just choke off and stop Russian shadow fleet ships from coming through. And so again, there's European countries that could have and still could do this, but someone needs to decide that Europe is at war with Russia. And the only folks that have decided that are the folks like Poland, who are closest to Russia and have the most to lose.
But given the constant instability of the situation in the Middle East, now, do you think that the waiver for Russian oil exports will stay in place even after the Strait of Hormuz finally is unblocked?
Yeah, I give it a 60-40 chance. I think that this is one of those things that will be carried along by inertia. And again, someone has to have the political will to stop it. And it's not something that's going to come out of the White House. And again, a significant chunk of the powerful economies in Europe are benefiting from cheap Russian energy, So, I mean, there's been 29 drone strikes in various cities in Europe. I think, Belgium has $200 billion in frozen Russian assets that Bart de Wever is holding on to like Gollum from the Lord of the Rings, right? And so he has no. Someone has to decide that Europe is at war with Russia, and it's not going to come from Western Europe. It's not going to come from the White House. So someone needs to step up.
Someone. Stephen Moore, founder of Ukraine Freedom Project and former chief of staff in the U.S. House of Representatives, was our guest this evening. Thank you very much. It was a pleasure as always.
Always great to be with you.
Thank you. And thank you for watching and stay with us for more interviews here on TVP World.